Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the eDiscovery channel. This is Tom O'Connor down in New Orleans, Louisiana, where we're dodging and skipping and between hurricanes now. We got one coming up the coast of Florida in a couple days. Who knows what's there's another one coming off the coast of Africa after that. We're just having all sorts of fun here. Along with, of course, as always, Rachi Messing. Rachi, how's the weather in Tel Aviv?
Hot. We're in the desert. Come on, it's hot all the time.
Silly question. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're both very, very happy to have with us today as our guest, Mike Quartararo, who's the president. Is that the right title, Mike? You're the president of ACEDS?
El Presidente. El Presidente. Yes, sir.
Presidente.
There's a chance.
Of ACEDS, the well-known organization that's helpful in certifying and testing and telling people that they're qualified to be an e-discovery expert. Mike's, I'm sure, not having any time pressures at all handling that position, right, Mike? You took that over?
No.
Yeah, no. Low pressure job? Yeah.
No.
Yeah, especially with
no
the COVID.
limits.
Yeah. All sorts of time on your hands, right? Well, you know, everybody knows you now from that. You and I, of course, have known each other for a number of years through things like the Legal Tech Show in New York and Bill Hamilton's show down at the University of Florida. But tell me, and I knew you, of course, before this, you were with the Stroock Stroock in New York, running their lit support department. But how did you get into this business? How did you get to Stroock? How did you get involved in technology? Which a little bit about your background, so people know where you're coming from.
Sure. So I started my career as a paralegal about 30 years ago, and worked at a number of big firms in New York. Landed at Skadden in the late 90s, and really a fantastic training ground for me. I got involved in these large-scale litigations, one of which was just 145 different lawsuits filed individually in every state, and the process of figuring out how to track and monitor all the complaints and the parties and the law firms and just the contact list. We used to type contact lists in Word, right? And it was a 200-page document with all the different courts, the clerks, the lawyers, everything, all these people involved. And it prompted me, even back then, I'd always been kind of computer curious. And, I go back to using a computer in the Commodore 64 days. And so, from that, it just, we're talking the late 90s, like Windows 95 was like the latest version. I think maybe 98 if anybody was keeping track, but
Don't mention that.
the idea that kind of struck me one day is I said, why am I killing myself trying to do all this stuff on paper? There's got to be a better way. And look, Skadden's always been sort of at the forefront of technological innovation. They're always trying to find ways to do things well-resourced firm, and really smart people running the firm. And so it really just became a question of, how am I going to make this work better? And I literally opened up Access and started building a database. And it really started with the contact list. Then we started linking to documents. And it just made the process so much more efficient, and everybody loved it. And it wasn't long after that the world of e-discovery kind of shifted from just scanning and coding to actually collecting electronic documents. And largely because I had, the wherewithal to think of like an Access data, like we all kind of laugh at it today, an Access database, right? Because I had thought of that, everybody said, "Oh, he's good with computers. Let's get him to do this new thing we want to do."
Right.
And then within a couple of years, it was called eDiscovery. And that's really how I launched it. I went from paralegal to sort of database administrator / project manager / technical analyst, systems analyst, and then really just started building on it from there, learning, basic infrastructure and how to make things integrate and operate, and just taking the legal foundation that I had developed as a paralegal and sort of applying technology over the top of it. And that's really how it went from there. So fast forward a couple of years, and Skadden is building a new legal technology department. And who do you know? Who do you think they asked to get involved? So I get involved there, and before long, I'm training and supervising paralegals and training people. And I think my title back then was like database administrator or something. And e-discovery in the early 2000s was kind of primitive, but nonetheless happening. And I stayed there for about 10 years. Eventually wound up running their legal technology office out on the West Coast, and then came back and was looking for something bigger and better to do. So I took the job at Stroock Stroock and Levan, where the task was really to build a lit support department and really just build some best practices into the firm, and did that with the staff that we brought in. And then I left there, spent about 10 years there as well. And I guess in around 2012, the whole ACEDS thing happened. No, maybe a little sooner, maybe 2011. We got involved with ACEDS just as a member at the time. And then, of course, a board member. We helped write some of the exam. We helped write some of the study materials. And then a couple of years after that, I got back at a conference and asked if I wanted to teach, if I wanted to develop a curriculum. And so I wound up teaching at Bryan University. Taught e-discovery and project management with some of the greats, Bill Hamilton being one of them from the University of Florida. Did that for about 6 years, and somewhere along the way, someone said, we were always cobbling together articles and stuff for class, and it became really important that we had good current materials. It's really hard to come up with a great e-discovery book then, so. Being my typical self, what did I do? I sat down and started writing a book.
Wow.
And so now we're into like 2016. The book came out in 2016. And that's been had some marginal success in the industry. And
that's on project management, right, Mike?
Yeah. So that's project management, electronic discovery.
Let people know that's still available, right?
It is still available.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm adopting it for a new course now for ACEDS. Stripping it down and taking out the pieces that I care about. So left Stroock in 2018, started my own consulting practice, did that for a couple of years. Working with corporate legal and law firms, just sort of best practices stuff, information governance. And I don't know, late 2019, Mary Mack, our friend, had announced she was leaving ACEDS, and they began a search, and I threw my hat in the ring. I thought it was something that I'd be interested in doing. I've been involved with the association, for about 10 years now, and I thought it was something I could do, and they liked me, I liked them, and here we sit.
Good deal. And are you a New York guy? You mentioned starting out there, but are you originally from New York?
Yeah. So born and bred in New York, outside New York right now on Long Island.
All right. Great.
So I'm curious, 20 years in the law firm, and then to kind of, all of a sudden leave and go out and do something on your own. What was that like? I mean, a law firm is a very structured, or tends to be a very structured organization. You've got obviously the people who you're reporting up to, and just to then all of a sudden be out on your own and have a consultancy, that must have been kind of like a shock to the system, or was it not?
It was, and I tend to describe it like this: both exciting and frightening all at the same time. But the good news is my contacts over the years, the writing of the book, the experience I had gained, it laid a good foundation for what I wanted to do. I immediately launched a website, and I started doing some digital marketing, and the phone frankly started to ring. And obviously I'm not going to not take someone's call. There's plenty of people in this industry who need help, and I was happy to do that. And it helped me to really get a good understanding. The period between the book coming out 2016 and then the time I took this role in late 2019, I spent a great deal of time traveling the country and Europe, really just listening to people. I was promoting the book, obviously, but listening to people and what they needed and what they wanted. And if there was any one universal theme that I got from all of that, is people need more education. They need more resources. They need, when they know something, they need some place to go to learn it. And if I look back at my career over the last 30 years, and there's one single theme throughout, it is education. Whether I was teaching someone how to create a database, do a document production, manage a document review, or just training paralegals and lawyers on the use of technology in general, it's always been something that I've done. And then I wound up actually teaching in a real academic setting. And then even as a consultant, a lot of consulting is really just helping people understand what they need to do. It's a form of instruction, a form of teaching, if you will. So to say that, the law firm environment is structured, yes. To say that it's got its quirks and pros and cons, yes. The transition out, it was really just a differing of vision for moving forward. The firm wanted to go one direction, and I had my eye on doing some other things, and so we parted ways, and that was fine. I enjoyed the time as a consultant. I still do some consulting on the side, and I just enjoy doing it because I like helping people. And falling into a role like the head of ACEDS was just it's almost like the job description was written for me, because it's part education, developing education. It's part delivering education. It's just been a really interesting ride. It's been busy, to be honest, but I wouldn't take any of it back, even if you asked me.
Cool. So let's actually talk about some of the stuff that you're working on at ACEDS now. Both Tom and I are active in the organization, so I think we've got a little bit of a inside track into some of the things and the initiatives that are going on there. But for people who aren't aware, and what are some of the things that you guys got going on, especially the new stuff that's come around in the last 10 months since you took over?
So a lot going on. I came in with an eye towards, the first time, whenever you start a new job, obviously the first couple of months are really just getting your legs under you and figuring out where all the moving parts are and what resources you have, who's on your team, what are their talents, and so forth. So it took me a good solid 3.5, 4 months to really just understand all the different parts of the organization, what we did. I mean, I knew, of course, about the certification. I knew about the educational offerings. What I set out to do early on, and I've talked about publicly, is really just expand some of the offerings, increase the value to the membership by doing things like mentorship programs, study groups, by offering some resources on the website. We're going to launch a new website any day now. And once we do, I think that the membership will see the enhancement to services there. Building new programs is a big priority for me. So we're building an e-discovery technology certificate program, which is going to introduce people to a bunch of different technologies in the space, and really something that the membership frankly asked for. So I'm happy to do that. We're partnering with a company called NSLT for that. And that's kind of a joint venture together. The new SEDS exam is out in beta. We refreshed the SEDS exam. We really just took the feedback over the last few years. The exam hadn't been updated in a number of years. So we assembled a team of experts. Both of you were among that team, I believe. And
I don't experts, but
I'm not sure about the expert part, but we
use that term loosely. It's fine. Nonetheless, we assembled a team, and everybody took a look at a different section, and we really just tried to incorporate some of the feedback we've heard over the years, align the questions on the exam better with the study materials, and then publish a new study guide that's been slightly reorganized, and I'll explain why in a minute. And so that's out in beta form right now. Anytime you have a psychometrically sound examination, it's got to be tested and vetted. And so that we'll probably publish that to the public in September is my guess right now. We're doing really well. We got about 100 people to take the beta, which was good. So we're in good shape there. And so I should talk a little bit about why we reorganized the study materials. I'm really excited to be working with subject matter experts in the UK, Canada, and Australia to develop international or more geographically focused exams. It may come as no surprise to you that folks in the UK could care less about the federal rules of procedure. So we're working with a team there. We're working with a team in Canada, and I'm just building a team in Australia to develop what I call geographically sensitive certification exams that are based on local laws, local practices, and customs in those jurisdictions. And I think that'll give us a big boost in terms of membership and the greater awareness about the SED certification in general.
Because
so
right
really,
now,
really excited about that.
You've got a couple of chapters right now that are international, right?
Yeah, so that's the other thing we're quite proud of. In the last 6 months, we've added 6 new chapters, including Toronto, Vancouver, both in Canada. We have chapters in Dublin, Ireland, the UK, the Netherlands, and South Africa. And we are currently talking to a big group in India and another group in Latin America. So,
cool.
So we're really looking to increase the international focus. And one of the things we're looking into too is having the exam in different languages, because nowadays it's pretty easy to translate things. So we'll make arrangements for that too, so people can feel more comfortable taking the exam.
That's awesome. Does the fact that travel restrictions and other things, restricting your ability to get out there and talk to people in all of these different locations, does that impact you, or does that make it actually easier as you're trying to grow the organization? Because, well, you're able to reach out to so many different places over video and not have to worry about travel because no one expects it.
The lack of travel, that lack of in-person contact has definitely impacted our reach. We've tried to make up for it with, video conferencing. Everybody's Zooming nowadays, or Teamsing. Is that a word? I don't know if that's a word, but
I don't think it's a verb yet, but yeah.
So, we're doing that. We've got chapters doing that. We're doing a lot of webinars. We're doing a lot of virtual meetings. We're attending a lot of virtual events. But the truth is, I think anybody in our space would tell you it's not the same. It's not the same as being in front of someone. We go to these conferences. You both know this well. We go to these conferences to shake hands and kiss babies and, have those face-to-face connections with other individuals. And it's just not the same virtually. It's virtually that. And it works for now, I think, because it has to work. We don't have a choice. Because I just don't know when it's going to be, people are going to feel safe traveling again or gathering in large groups. So we're making the best of it. It has not hurt our membership. It has not hurt our SED certification momentum. We set a goal to get 180 new SED certifications in the first 6 months of the year, and we managed to get 166, so about 90%.
Yeah, very cool. Awesome. Looking back at your career and now ACEDS, and especially as you've done like some of the refreshes and things like that, what's been the biggest change? What have you seen that like has really shifted in the industry, and both overall, but also in the last few years that's really causing you to rethink how you're approaching the education side?
I think it depends. Are we talking about like pandemic, or are we just talking just in general?
No, let's exclude the pandemic. I think that absolutely impacts everyone.
Yeah.
Yes. But just, what kind of things have you seen that's really shifted, in the industry, and what people have to deal with when they're dealing with electronic discovery and, compliance and all of those types of things?
I think the biggest impact has been machine learning. I think it's got the biggest potential, and I think it's not entirely clear to me whether it's either not living up to its potential or we're just afraid of it. I was talking to a colleague yesterday about all the different ways that AI and machine learning are being leveraged in the space, and all the different ways it could be used for both good and for bad. I mean, if you think about the way some governments are using AI to sort of predict human behavior in connection with like the criminal justice system, it's a little bizarre to me. But then I look at the ways it can be used we leverage it in document review, and it's a very effective and efficient use of it, right? And so the biggest shift I've seen is the ability of people to really innovate in new and different ways. There's apps for everything now, and there's new tools coming out every day, and new companies that I've never heard of. And I just look at it and I'm in awe of how someone thought of that. And I wish I could have been that person. So if I was going to talk about how it's shifted, I think the ability to innovate, and just like things like no code and low code, that's really easy stuff to pick up. I wish I had the time for it. I don't, but I'm glad that other people do. So I'm excited to see what's coming in the future in that regard.
Cool. Well, what do you think is coming? I mean, what do you think is going to shift the way that the practice of law is done, and that technology is going to really have that kind of impact, specifically from the technology side and the discovery side? What do you see is going to happen? Or like, if put on your magical hat and let's hear a prediction for the next 2 to 5 years.
Oh boy. I don't know. I honestly, there's so much going on that I don't know that I have that answer or the ability to sort of be that prognosticator. I've seen some cool stuff in compliance nowadays. I've seen some cool stuff in automating tasks that were not previously automated. Things like processing, the kind of compliance tools that are sort of just bubbling up relevant information without anybody really having to do anything, and sort of red flagging things before they happen. Those kind of tools are interesting to me. And I think we're going to see more of that as the tools become more mature, and as we begin to understand better what we need these tools to do. It's interesting because I get asked questions like that all the time, and I'm actually not, and have not for quite a while now, worked on projects, e-discovery projects, right? So I'm this author of a project management book. I worked in the weeds for 20 years, and now I'm not anymore. And so when I get asked questions like that, it's always a little off-putting to me, because technically speaking, I'm not rolling up my sleeves in that space anymore, and it's difficult for me. But I still try to stay in touch. I still read all the journals and the press and the industry trades, and try to stay in contact with people who are doing the actual work. But if I had to put my finger on one thing that I think is coming, is a lot more automation, I think.
Makes
Well,
sense.
education, Mike, your organization, of course, is in the forefront of training people, and specifically in the e-discovery space. But all three of us have talked about this. We have a real lacking in training of attorneys in technology in general. Do you think there's going to be any, especially with the combination of more remote education? It's pretty clear that this fall, schools that thought they were going to go back to in-person learning are starting to pull back from that.
Mm-hmm.
And the pressure to have more technical competence from the states and the bar associations. Are we going to see a combination there that'll actually lead to more training for attorneys? Or are we still going to be the gang that couldn't type straight?
So a little bit of a history lesson. When ACEDS was originally formed, the thought back then was that it was really something for attorneys to do, right? To get SED certified, e-discovery specialist certified. It turned out that the founders kind of missed the mark there, and it became more popular with, sort of the working stiffs like us, the lit sport directors, the technical analysts, the IT people moving into e-discovery, the paralegals. And I today we still have 20% of our membership is attorneys. But obviously with changes in the rules and technology competence requirements that are cropping up all over the place, we'd love to see that grow. And so I'm happy to say that we're doing a couple of things in that area. Number one, we're bringing in a across the board CLE product that'll make all of our offerings CLE eligible. So hopefully that'll attract some attorneys and interest them in our content, number one. But we're also reaching out to bar associations around the country and trying to get into their educational programs and become I want to say a service provider in that space. Our parent company, Barbary, is a huge player in the legal education space. And ACEDS, frankly, just aligns with that very same mission. So we're leveraging contacts on that side of the equation as well. We're launching a pilot program at University of Florida Law School that's going to begin to educate students about who we are and what we offer. And the whole idea being that becomes a little bit more sticky, and we hope to advance that to other schools. And so attorneys coming up, even if, the more senior attorneys today are not so much interested in e-discovery or project management, the idea would be that young attorneys coming up would be. And we're just trying to make it a little bit more sticky and provide the education that we believe they need.
Great.
So I've got a question before Tom takes us out with a final question. Most of us never thought that this is what we'd be doing with our lives. Most of us in this industry, we didn't set out to be part of, e-discovery.
Right.
So my question for you is, what did you actually want to be? What were you, or is this kind of the path that you actually wanted? I doubt it. But if you could do anything else, what would it have been?
So it shifted for me. When I was a kid, I wanted to be the head of a rock band, and I wanted to travel around and drink too much and act a fool. I'm
still doing that now, so
Mission accomplished here, yeah.
It became apparent to me pretty quickly that that doesn't pay well, and there's no health insurance. So then I kind of set when I became a paralegal, I really had my eye on law school. And to be honest, I studied law a little bit. It wasn't for me. And I learned from working with attorneys that it was probably something that I didn't want to get into, at least not, at least of all, to be saddled with the debt that comes along with that. And so I actually thought that I would be working in legal as an administrator, and technology came along, as I said, in the late 90s and just kind of shifted my focus. When I shifted from sort of paralegal to e-discovery, I never looked back, and it's just been a wild ride since. So I share the sentiment. We never really saw this coming, but it's like any good thing, right? You ride the wave, and
yep.
We're still riding it, I suppose, the three of us.
Yeah, hey, it's working. So no complaints. So, okay, Tom, take us out.
Okay, well, here's the question that Mike tells us has been stumping him for weeks now since we first asked him to prepare, and sleepless nights and tossing and turning. We ask this of everybody at the end of the session that we do with them. If you could spend the day with anybody in our profession, living or dead, and just not necessarily on a task, working on a matter, just being able to talk, have lunch, shoot the breeze, who would that be?
Yeah, and for everyone who's listening, just when they give you a heads up that you're going to do this, you need to spend a little time thinking about that, because if you're like me, your life has been influenced by so many people that it's really a difficult question to answer. I mean, there's obviously been a number of industry luminaries that have affected my life. There's been lawyers I've worked with. There's been professors I've worked with. And it's difficult for me to single anyone out because, as I told Tom and Rachi, they've all affected my life and my career in different ways, and impacted me personally and professionally in different ways. But I actually came up with, while we were talking here, if there was one person or one or two people that I could spend some time with, I'd like to spend some time with the early innovators in computers, the Alan Turings, the Ray Kurzweils, the sort of the founding fathers, if you will, and there are others who I'm forgetting, so excuse me for that, but to see if what they envisioned, obviously they saw something in the future, and I don't think they had any clue whatsoever what we'd be doing today. And so if I could sit down with them and have lunch with them and really understand, because whenever it comes right down to us, I look at the world that we live in and some of the issues that are facing contemporary America in particular, but the world as a whole, understanding foundations is the key to really having success in any aspect of your life. I don't care if you're a doctor, a lawyer, a psychologist, or a rock and roll star. You have to understand foundations, and frankly, there wouldn't be any rock and roll if there wasn't, those guys in the 50s and the 60s. Those foundations still ring true for me, and I think that's true in computers, in artificial intelligence, and all the things that touch our lives in e-discovery every day. So that's my answer, guys. And no, it's not what you wanted.
Yes.
I love Browning too, and he became a dear friend. But I really think that the foundations are really where we need to go in terms of understanding where we are today and where we can take it from here.
Yeah. Oh, great answer. Great answer.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, Michael, thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk with us. Love hearing about some of those things that are coming up for ACEDS. And how's things, just real quick, how's things health-wise? Everybody in the family doing all right?
Everybody's good. We're holed up at home. We're hiding from the virus.
There you go.
Best we can.
Ditto. All right. Well, thanks again. We appreciate it. Always a pleasure to speak with you. We would usually be catching up at conferences coming up, and well, there aren't any. So glad to have some FaceTime with you now. Thanks again, Rocky.
We'll see you on Zoom.
There you go. We'll see you in Zoomville, right?
Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
You betcha. Thanks again, Rocky, and to everyone out there. We'll see you again next time in the eDiscovery channel or on the eDiscovery channel. Thanks so much.